St. Alden's Hospital, 6 a.m. A quiet new nurse moved silently down the sterile hall. "Hey, rookie, you here to fold linens or here to cry?" Mocking laughter echoed behind her. They called her the mouse, dead weight, and a silent ghost. She ignored them, keeping her head down, focused on her work. Suddenly, the floor gave a deep tremor. A deafening roar shook the roof. A guard burst in, yelling, "Navy helicopter landing! They're asking for a SEAL combat medic?" An officer stormed in, shouting, "Where is Specialist Raina Hale? We need her now!" Raina Hale, 29, was a ghost of her former self. She was an ex-SEAL combat medic, an elite few who'd left the service after the catastrophic Nightfall Ridge mission. She'd lost her entire team that night. Every last man. The weight of that failure, the trauma, it had reduced her to someone unrecognizable. St. Alden's was supposed to be her sanctuary, a place where routine was the highest form of drama, a place she could finally be silent. She needed the simple, repetitive rhythm of civilian life to quiet the ghosts of the battlefield. She started her first shift, hoping to blend into the sea of scrubs. But her reserved demeanor and quiet intensity, the very things she sought for peace, made her an immediate target. The staff saw a small, cautious woman who didn't introduce herself or make eye contact. They assumed inexperience. They noticed the awkward hesitation when someone asked about her previous medical roles. They concluded she was timid, perhaps even incompetent. Brenda, the charge nurse, a woman who thrived on power and intimidation, immediately sensed what she perceived as weakness. "Rookie, you missed 2 steps on the supply count. Do it again, faster this time. We don't have time for slow learners, Hale." Raina's response was always the same: soft, precise, obedient. "Yes, Nurse Brenda, I'll correct it immediately." Dr. Peterson, a senior resident, muttered to his colleagues at the nurses' station, loud enough for Raina to hear, "How did she even get her license? She looks like she'd fainted a paper cut." They couldn't see the truth. They couldn't see the woman who once performed an emergency cricothyroidotomy in pitch darkness under sustained enemy fire. They couldn't see the raw strength that allowed her to carry a 200-pound SEAL half a mile through a hostile zone while bleeding herself. The warrior was locked away. Raina wanted her to stay gone. She just wanted to empty bedpans and chart V-drips without incident. But true competence, like true trauma, never stays buried for long. It always forces itself to the surface when the moment demands it. It happened around 9:30 that morning. The searing pitch of the code blue alarm sounded. Patient 312, Mr. Harrison, a frail man scheduled for a minor procedure, had suffered a sudden, unexpected cardiac arrest. Chaos erupted. Panic is contagious, and it instantly gripped the civilian medical team. "Crash cart! Where are the paddles?" Brenda shrieked, her voice tight with fear, fumbling to find the right medication. "Someone grab the EpiPen! Hurry!" Raina moved. No shouting, no apparent haste in her demeanor. Just continuous, efficient, almost frightening motion. She gently nudged Brenda aside, her voice cutting through the panic like a scalpel. Quiet but absolute. "Get the epinephrine, 2 milligrams, immediately." Her tone wasn't a suggestion. It was an unnegotiable military command, delivered with frigid calm. Brenda stared, too stunned to speak. "Who are you to order me, Hale? You're the rookie." Raina didn't engage. Her focus was entirely on Mr. Harrison's chest, her hands locked together. She started compressions, deep, perfectly rhythmic, impossibly strong. She was counting internally, a life-or-death metronome ticking a perfect beat. The chaotic energy of the room immediately focused on her hands, her pace, her unshakable calm. 40 seconds, the exact time it took for the drugs to be administered and the defibrillator shock to restart the flickering heart muscle. Beep, beep, beep. The monitor registered a rhythm, shaky but clear. Sinus rhythm restored. The room exhaled in a wave of crushing relief. Dr. Peterson, the man who had doubted her nerve, looked down at her, his face a mixture of awe and professional confusion. "Where did you learn that? That precision, that timing?" Raina stood up, her face instantly returning to its familiar, guarded mask. She offered only one simple, non-committal truth. I've worked in places where there is no margin for error. Error means death. Brenda, regaining her desperate temper and need for control, immediately interjected. You acted outside of procedure, Hale. We don't need rogue heroes breaking protocol here. She tried for authority, but her voice cracked. Raina simply bowed her head, pulling off her gloves, failure heavy in her posture. I apologize. I overstepped. It wasn't an apology for saving a life. It was an apology for the conflict, for being pulled back into the spotlight she despised. She was tired of fighting. She was tired of being the warrior. The patient, Mr. Harrison, was wheeled out an hour later, stabilized. He caught Raina's eye and gave her a tired but knowing smile. That young girl, he told his daughter later, she has the hands of someone who saved hundreds of lives. I saw it in her eyes, pure fire. Fate, however, had no interest in Raina's quiet retirement. It was interested in the professional she had buried. Barely 10 minutes after the cardiac arrest incident, the floor began to tremble again. This time, it wasn't a gentle shudder. It was a violent, rhythmic shaking that rattled the entire wing. The deep, thunderous sound of heavy-lift rotor systems became deafening. This was no routine airlift. This was an incursion. The security guard, now pale and sweating, burst through the door again, yelling over the roar of the engines. It's the Navy! An emergency landing! They've secured the roof for an airdrop. Everyone scrambled toward the stairwell, drawn by morbid curiosity and the primal need to witness the unfolding drama. What kind of emergency required such massive military intervention in a civilian hospital? On the roof, a dark Navy MH-60 Seahawk combat transport helicopter was settling. Its gigantic rotor washed blasting snow, leaves, and debris into a violent, blinding vortex. A man in full combat gear, a naval special warfare officer, identifiable by the familiar trident patch on his chest, leapt out of the side door. He yelled, his voice strained and desperate against the roaring engine noise. We are looking for Specialist Raina Hale. We request critical, immediate medical support. We need her immediately. The word SEAL hung in the air. The word specialist. The name Hale. Every head in the hallway turned in unison. Every nurse, every doctor, every intern stared at the small, quiet nurse who was still, unbelievably, calmly folding a blanket on a supply cart, trying to continue the normal. Brenda's jaw dropped. She stammered, unable to form a coherent word. You. Raina looked up. Her eyes, usually veiled by fatigue and reserve, widened with a raw, unconcealed flash of horror. She had run, she had hidden, she had changed the name on her employment file, but they had found her. The past was violently tearing its way back into the present. The officer, Lieutenant Commander Hayes, found her, his face a grim mask of military urgency. Doc Hale, thank God you're here. Please, we have a SEAL in critical condition. We couldn't risk a field move to a distant military base. You're the closest trauma center. Doc? The title echoed down the crowded hallway, confirming the unbelievable truth about their mouse. She tore off the flimsy blue hospital gloves and pulled down her disposable mask. Her expression was now completely different. Not fearless, but focused. Laser-focused. Decisive. She didn't wait for orders. She moved with the decisive, practiced speed of someone advancing toward a gunfight. She moved like a predator seeking a cure. She ran up the stairs, the large, dark silhouette of the helicopter growing larger until she ducked under the spinning rotors and into the deafening fuselage, buffeted by wind. Inside, the scene was catastrophic. A severely wounded SEAL was strapped tightly to a litter, surrounded by anxious, inexperienced corpsmen. Raina caught her breath. She froze for one precious, painful second. It was a break in her professional calm. The casualty was Lieutenant Cole Anders, her former team leader, the man she thought had died 3 years ago at Nightfall Ridge. The reason she quit and sought silence. Cole! Her voice was a cracked, whispered choke, the first genuine, unconcealed emotion the hospital staff had ever heard from her. You're alive? Cole was barely conscious, his breathing shallow and rattling. A penetrating trauma injury had caused massive, life-threatening internal chest trauma. He tried to speak, his eyes finding hers. "Only trust you. Only trust your hands, Raina," he gasped out, the words muffled by the oxygen mask. The emotional shock was immediately and completely overridden by the professional imperative. Raina lightly slapped her own cheek, a quick, sharp movement to steady herself. He is alive, and he is seconds from death. He's crashing, respiratory rate is dropping. He has a tension pneumothorax. We don't have time for an OR. We don't have 5 minutes to move him. Her voice was back to that military calm, sharp, commanding, and absolute. "I need 2 large-bore IV lines. Get me the needle decompression kit and the chest drain tube. We are doing a thoracic surgery right now. On this deck. On this litter." Brenda, who had followed the crowd and pushed her way to the doorway, attempted one last desperate assertion of control, screaming over the engine noise. "You can't do that! You're not credentialed for emergency surgery. This is malpractice." Commander Hayes, a man who had seen men die unnecessarily, instantly cut her off, his voice a dangerous growl, directed squarely at the charge nurse. "That woman is the best combat medic SEAL Team Bravo ever had. She is a trauma specialist. Interfering with her work is obstruction of an active military rescue. You will stand down, nurse. Now." Brenda stumbled backward, frozen in complete, horrified disbelief. Raina ignored the civilian drama entirely. She worked, her hands moving with an almost frightening grace. She took the scalpel. She made the incision, clean, decisive, and precise. She inserted the chest drain, releasing the compressed air, the sound of the air hissing out into the fuselage. A life-saving, highly invasive procedure performed on a vibrating floor, under the deafening roar of a Seahawk. It was a masterpiece of trauma medicine. Her hands, the hands they had mocked for folding linens, were now performing the bloody, intricate choreography of life and death with unmatched efficiency. 12 minutes later. Cole's vitals stabilized. His heart was steady. He would live. Commander Hayes, a man who had witnessed countless acts of valor, stood rigidly, his eyes reflecting deep respect. He snapped a sharp, formal salute to the woman in civilian scrubs. "Doc Hale, it is an honor. Welcome back." Later that night, one of the young Navy corpsmen, still shell-shocked by the impromptu surgery, spoke to a stunned hospital orderly. "I've seen her do that under heavy fire. She's a machine. But today, she was stronger. She had to save the only man who represented her past." The sight of the rooftop surgery immediately went viral, not just within the hospital, but on local news and then nationally. The entire medical community was buzzing. New nurse performs emergency surgery on SEAL warrior aboard helicopter. Hero or rogue? The hospital administrator, Mr. Sterling, a man obsessed with procedure, legal liability, and avoiding bad publicity, immediately called Raina into his office. "Ms. Hale," he began, his face tight with indignation and fear. "I appreciate the heroic intention, but you know you are not permitted to perform invasive surgery on these premises. This is a severe, litigable breach of protocol." As he reached for the phone to call security, the door swung open forcefully. 2 officers from the Department of Defense, a major and a legal counsel, stepped inside. The atmosphere in the room instantly shifted, becoming cold, formal, and overwhelmingly authoritative. The major carried a folder marked "Classified Red." The legal counsel spoke first, his voice dry, commanding, and final. "Director Sterling, Ms. Hale is operating under DoD Level 5 medical authority. This is non-revocable status. She retains full surgical and trauma privileges worldwide. She is permitted to execute any procedure necessary to save a life, civilian or military, in any emergent situation, regardless of the facility's internal protocol." Director Sterling paled. His indignation instantly melted into palpable fear of federal intervention and military authority. Brenda, who had lurked outside the office with several other nurses, finally stepped in, her previous scorn replaced by genuine confusion and a desperate need for the truth. Who are you, really?" she whispered, the question echoing the fear and astonishment of the entire hospital staff. Raina finally met her gaze. Her face held no triumph, nor anger over the past mockery, She was simply tired of pretense. She was tired of running. I was just someone who failed, and now I am someone who tries to save the people others think can't be saved. The DoD officials weren't just there to clarify medical privileges. They were there to address the full fallout of the rooftop rescue, which had dragged the 3-year-old Nightfall Ridge disaster back into the spotlight. They publicly confirmed that during that infamous mission, Raina Hale was the sole survivor because she spent the entire evacuation window repeatedly trying to drag 5 critically wounded SEALs, including Cole Anders, through heavy, sustained crossfire. She did not retreat. She ran into the fight again and again until she was the only one left standing. The media swarmed St. Alden's, turning it into a temporary satellite news hub. Raina's face, once the mouse, was now on every screen nationwide. She was hailed as a quiet hero who had buried her recommendation for a Congressional Medal of Honor to avoid the public scrutiny and media circus that followed. But the most agonizing revelation, the detail that truly broke the story, was yet to come. It wasn't the heroic story of her saving Cole that mattered most. It was the truth of why her team died. As the DoD investigated the evacuation failure at Nightfall Ridge, the truth behind the disaster was exposed, forcing a shakeup across the entire military command structure. The catastrophic cancellation of the extraction order, the very order that left SEAL Team Bravo exposed and defenseless for 18 crucial minutes, was not a tactical error. It was a deliberate, selfish blunder by a high-ranking officer who focused entirely on protecting his own highly visible, politically charged career timeline, not the lives of the soldiers. Raina, the only survivor who saw the failure, had provided a deliberately vague, incomplete report to the military in the aftermath. She chose to protect the immediate reputation of the Special Operations Command, sacrificing her own peace, her own career, and her ability to grieve publicly for the sake of greater organizational stability. She chose silence over justice for 3 long, agonizing years. Cole Anders, now stabilized and conscious in the ICU, woke up and confirmed the entire story, delivering a statement that brought the hospital and the nation to a standstill. Raina didn't just save my life on the roof today. She saved me 3 years ago, too, by swallowing the truth to protect the command that failed us. She carried our failure so the organization wouldn't collapse. She is the strongest person I have ever known. The nation was stunned. The hospital was aghast. Director Sterling publicly apologized to Raina, his voice trembling with both humiliation and reverence. Brenda pushed through the crowd of reporters and onlookers. She was weeping openly, tears blurring her vision and soaking her scrubs. She fell to her knees in front of Raina. "I was so wrong, Hale. I truly didn't know your history. I called you deadweight and weak." Raina placed a firm hand on Brenda's shoulder, helping her stand. "I have judged others too, Brenda, especially when I didn't understand their pain. We all carry things no one else can see." She had been judged as weak when in reality, she was strong enough to carry the weight of the Navy's darkest secret and her own survivor's guilt. Dr. Peterson, the colleague who doubted her professional qualifications, watched the interaction from afar. He shook his head slowly. "I've never seen someone so calm when the cruelty of their past comes back to demand them. She's not just a hero, she's a force of moral nature." Raina Hale's refusal to capitalize on her moment changed the entire atmosphere of St. Alden's Hospital. She sought no vengeance against her mockers. She sought reform. The initial media frenzy died down, but the respect, the professional awe, remained. The hospital board, recognizing the profound impact of her quiet competence and moral strength, called a rare, mandatory all-staff meeting. They expected a grand speech about military strategy and heroism. She stepped up to the podium, still in simple scrubs, standing at the exact same height she always did. "I don't want recognition," she said, her voice now clear and steady, the mouse entirely gone. "I only want this hospital to be a place where everyone is treated like a person. Not something to be judged, not something to be degraded, and not something to be feared." Her words were simple, profound, and they struck everyone with the immediate, heavy impact of her military history. She was credible. Active and retired members of SEAL Team Bravo sent a collective, public video tribute, thanking her for her silence and her strength. They officially dubbed her the Trident Keeper, the one who put honor above personal grievance. A powerful senator, deeply moved by her story and her refusal of credit, offered to award her the Congressional Medal of Honor for civilian courage, a rarely given distinction for non-military actions. Raina politely but firmly declined the senator's offer and issued a public statement. Give that recognition to the people who are struggling to save lives every single day in this hospital, she requested. They are the true heroes who run to the code blues, the ones who stand 16-hour shifts, the ones who endure verbal abuse and still come back. They deserve the honor, not me. Cole Anders, now recovering quickly and near discharge, came to the meeting, supported by a physical therapist. He intercepted Raina outside the hall. You ran from the shadow, Raina. For 3 years, you used scrubs as camouflage. You hid the SEAL warrior inside the civilian. It's time to step out and lead. Raina looked at him, the first man she had failed and then saved. She nodded. The fear was gone. The acceptance was complete. It was time. Director Sterling, now a profoundly humbled man seeking genuine organizational change, offered her an open position. Any role, any salary. Raina proposed a single radical change that would utilize her high-stress expertise: the formation of the Hale response team, a specialized unit dedicated only to the most critical, time-sensitive emergencies, an elite, hyper-efficient unit that operated on clear communication, decisive action, and zero tolerance for internal conflict or politics. Brenda, the charge nurse who had publicly mocked her, stood silently at the end of the line of applicants. She was not smiling or confident. She was earnest. Raina looked at her, expecting a formal explanation for the surprising request. Brenda only whispered, I want to be your subordinate, Doc Hale. I want to learn what real competence and real leadership look like. I want to be part of the change. Raina smiled, a genuine, warm, radiant smile the hospital had never seen before. I don't need perfect people, Brenda. I just need people willing to change. Welcome aboard. The Hale response team became the symbol of the hospital's new, non-judgmental ethos, quickly achieving legendary status for their speed and success rate. The entire community shifted its attitude, respecting competence over seniority. If you believe that the person who is underestimated is sometimes the strongest, most resilient, and quietest hero, take a moment now. Type in the comments, I will be kind. A heart that endured the extreme violence of the battlefield finally found its healing in the stillness of peace. A year passed since the helicopter landing, and the Hale response team had transformed St. Alden's into a regional leader in emergency trauma care. Raina Hale, now the hospital's official chief of emergency response, no longer sought refuge in silence. She spoke when necessary, her voice carrying an unshakable authority, born not of rank, but of verified wisdom and relentless success. She had perfectly integrated the deadly efficiency of the SEAL combat medic with the deep, empathetic care of the civilian nurse. She was complete. The ghosts of Nightfall Ridge no longer haunted her. They were laid to rest by the lives she and Cole saved every month. Cole Anders, fully recovered and now working as a strategic defense consultant, visited the hospital regularly. He was her permanent, unofficial partner in training the response team, bringing the highest-level military crisis management protocols into civilian medicine. Their bond was unbreakable, a partnership forged in trauma and cemented by purpose, a synthesis of strength and action. The partnership between Raina and Cole created a new level of response. One day, a horrific school bus crash occurred, dozens of casualties, each with complex priority needs. As the first victim helicopter landed, Raina and Cole were there. Raina used the military's March triage system, massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulation, head injury, hypothermia, for assessment. She wasted not a second. Chloe, victim 3, massive bleed to the right leg. Immediate tourniquet, then IV access. Brenda, victim 5, partial airway occlusion. Set up for intubation and have the cric kit ready if it fails. Her words were a constant stream of commands, so clear they were impossible to misinterpret. Cole stood beside her, not as a consultant, but as an action coordinator, keeping the environment safe and focused. 3 ambulances coming in 15. Keep the lane clear. No one looks back. Team A, maintain the respiratory rhythm for patient 2. Their synchronization was a dance of life. Raina's calm was mirrored by Cole's decisiveness. They were two halves of the same philosophy. In chaos, only cold professionalism can beat death. The lesson of the mentor. One day, a young nurse named Chloe, fresh out of school and recently moved to the Hale response team, approached Raina in the clean, organized supply room. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, fear choking her voice. "Chief Hale," Chloe began anxiously, "I'm afraid I'm not good enough. When the pressure hits, I'm terrified I'll make a fatal mistake." Raina turned, her face calm, her eyes reflecting the fear she once knew. She took the young nurse's shaking hand, grounding her. "I am afraid too, Chloe," Raina said softly. "I was afraid when the rotors were spinning and I had to cut Cole's chest. I was terrified when I had to choose to carry the Navy's failure instead of revealing the truth. I was afraid, but I took one more step forward. We all feel that fear. It never fully goes away." Raina then showed Chloe a simple technique she learned during SEAL training, the tactical pause. "When the panic hits," Raina instructed, "do the 4-7-8 rule. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, and exhale slowly for 8. Just once. In that moment, Chloe, you are not a scared person. You are an information processor. You are converting fear into data. Trust your training. You are here because you are ready." Chloe tried it and felt the calmness spread. She learned that the discipline of the body could govern the chaos of the mind. Conclusion, purpose, and closure. Raina was no longer an individual. She was a symbol, a teacher. She not only led the response team but became a mentor to the entire hospital, teaching them how to face injustice, doubt, and fear. She had learned that her role was not to run from her past, but to use it to light the way for others. The final scene. Raina stands alone on the roof of St. Alden's as the sun begins to set gloriously, painting the western sky in fiery oranges and soft purples. She is conducting a final security check of the landing zone, now a permanent, respected feature of the hospital. Suddenly, a familiar shadow sweeps overhead. A small, fast Navy helicopter, a utility-light aircraft, makes a sharp turn, flying low over the hospital roof. The pilot, recognizing the solitary, authoritative figure below, dips the nose of the aircraft in a respectful, silent salute to the woman who was both ghost and hero. Raina offers a slight nod in return. Not the rigid posture of a SEAL reporting for duty, but the quiet, dignified poise of someone who has finally found home in her purpose. The symbol of the closed loop. The tiny silver SEAL combat medic badge she wears, discreetly pinned to the collar of her charged nurse scrubs, catches the last rays of the sun, gleaming. The past and the present, the warrior and the healer, finally reflect a single unbroken light of courage, competence, and peace. Raina Hale didn't need a Medal of Honor to prove her worth. She needed to save the man who symbolized her failure to prove it to herself. Her journey is a testament to the quiet strength carried by the underestimated in the profound, transformative impact of choosing compassion over judgment. If you believe courage still lives in everyday heroes, subscribe to the Veteran Story. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.